Welcome to Death Row. Please remove all of your clothing and personal effects and place them into the white bag as we dress you out in a one-piece red jumpsuit with Department of Corrections on the tag. You will be fingerprinted, photographed, and assigned to a cell in this institution where you will dwell for the remainder of your days till it is time for your execution. Welcome to Death Row. Welcome to Death Row.
When you're innocent and you are like incarcerated every day, it feels like a week or a month. And it's something that you can't get used to. My name is Stacey, Sabur Tyler. I'm an innocent man on death row. I've been incarcerated for over 30 years. I was in the kitchen. She screamed my name, but I just seen flame. I panicked. I was in shock. I was scared. I think that the only thing that if I could think was probably just put out the fire.
The most reliable determination I can come to is that, this kerosene heater was being refueled with kerosene that's contaminated with gasoline. And resulted in a flare-up and the ignition of the clothing on the victim.
From the moment paramedics encountered her for the first time and up until her hospitalization, she was asked a couple times whether Sabur did this to her, lit her on fire, and whether this was an accident, like a heater flare-up accident. She denied that Sabur did this to her, and she would confirm that it was just a heater accident. And this is when she was not under any sedatives. So the state and Sabur's story basically put forward this narrative of domestic abuse that was building up over time between Sabur and Evon, that somehow eventually led to Sabur lighting Evon on fire.
There is no evidence in this particular case to formulate the hypothesis that this was gasoline poured on the victim and then just ignited independent of anything that was going on with the heater. Definitely evidence that was not used, and there was alternative hypotheses for how this fire actually started that did not seem to be considered.
And at this point, Evon's intubated. She can't even speak, so the only way she can communicate is through nodding or shaking her head. And shortly before the interview began, she was given another dosage of the drugs that she's being administered, including fentanyl. In this interview, the nurse asked a question again, whether Sabur did this to her. That's the first question. And she shakes her head no. And then after a series of leading questions, Evon eventually shakes her head to yes. In Evon's situation, a competency assessment would have been needed to see whether Evon could even understand the questions and whether she could respond to the questions in an appropriate manner.
I couldn't get over the fact that she had passed. So it's still hard to talk about, because Evon was my lady. I loved her.
There is no testimony from law enforcement or police at trial regarding any instances of abuse from Sabur, going to their residence to handle any situation regarding abuse. And quite frankly, there's no arrests on him for anything even close to violence.
I mean, I can remember like it was yesterday, and the judge hit that gavel and said, may God rest your soul or something like that. That really, really hurt. That really hurt. Because like I say, we was close. Still hurt to this day.
I'm just convinced no one really knew him from the beginning. Because I'm just thinking about who he is, the situation he's gone through, 32 years on death row, and still the way he speaks, and the way he just wants his story to be told from his perspective.
I think telling your story is really attesting to your own humanity, and it's claiming your agency.
For like years, I've been trying to get people to like hear me, but nobody would. You know, it like means a lot. It really does. You know? I almost feel human again.
I think of Sabur just in terms of his personality. Some of the words that come to mind are gentle, kind, thoughtful, shy. I really believe in Sabur's innocence. And what I realized is that he has, I think until now actually, he has lost hope, and he hasn't had hope for decades.
And the legislative intent as it relates to people on death row has two factors. One is that there should be a 2-year time limit on all appeals, and the second is that it should open up the state to use any method of execution that's currently allowed in any other state.
Yeah, well, I tell them all the time I love you. That's the main thing. And I believe your innocence. I wholeheartedly do. I tell them all the time, just keep fighting.
I once asked him if he ever dreamed about what it would be like to be free, and he said, "I dare not dream."
The time is like so long, you know, because you know that you are somewhere where you ain't supposed to be. It's hard to put into words where free people can understand.